Mr. Bram Hanekom providing a 2-minute message of support. Thank you.
Amandla! Amandla! Comrades, I'm going to be very brief. The state of Israel's government have been trying to use water like a weapon. While Gaza remains one of the most drought-stricken spaces of land in the world, Israel has the audacity to go around the world and try to use water as a weapon to confuse the situation, to take vulnerable communities when we're facing a drought, to think that because of our drought, we'll now believe that they are the ones who can bring the technology to come fix our problems. And yet they can't do it for the people of Palestine. The people of Palestine have no water. Now, Comrade Nomvula, I know you're here as an NEC deployee, so I apologize for speaking about the issue of water. But comrades, the African National Congress, including Comrade Nomvula, is unequivocally clear, and we know this as the BDS campaign, on the issue of Palestine. So if Israel think that they found a weak point because we're thirsty, we'll drink Iranian water. We'll drink water from other countries. Israel does not have a monopoly on water. We don't need their water. Thank you very much, comrades. Amandla!
Comrades, we are now going to have Mr. Al-Suma Al-Drami, who is the first secretary at the Embassy of the State of Palestine. Sorry, he's only going to speak for about 2 minutes, which was meant to be a 7-minute program. Sorry.
Amandla! Amandla! Viva Palestine, viva! Viva South Africa, viva! I just given 2 minutes just to speak. I was prepared many things to speak about it, but I would like to raise a few issues. Firstly, the issue of solidarity with the Palestinian people. South Africa is the most important country that in support with our cause, especially the BDS of South Africa. Palestine extend or considered the solidarity of South Africa is the core of the international solidarity with the Palestinian people. South Africa always in the front of the solidarity with the Palestinian people. Even even in the United Nations or any international arena, we found South Africa support Palestine, support all application of Palestine toward the freedom of Palestine and toward the liberation of Palestinian people. This is my first issue. My second issue, which is very important, my comrade Abraham touched this issue, Gaza Strip. What is happening in Gaza? Gaza, the size of Gaza is 360 square kilometer. In that 360 square kilometer, there is 2 million Gazian people living in that small spot of the world. 95% of the water of Gaza Strip is undrinkable. Can you imagine 95% of the water of Gaza undrinkable? The Gazan cannot drink this water. You know, what Israel is doing in Gaza, they are stealing the Palestinian water from West Bank, from Gaza, and sell it back to the Palestinian, which is unbelievable. And in South Africa and all over the world, they're marketing themselves that Israel is the only country can treat the drought in the world, which is not true. How the Israelis, the slaughter of the Palestinian people, come to South Africa and marketing themselves to solve the drought of South Africa, and they cause the drought for the Palestinian people in Gaza. This is unacceptable. My comrade minister, I promise you, I spoke to many friends in all over the world to assist the friendly country South Africa. I need to assist, Palestine need to assist you, to assist the problem, to treat the problem of water in South Africa. If your schedule during this year allow for me to bring a few people in discussion with you to give you advice, I will be ready to do that for South Africa, because as I told you, South Africa is the only country who lead the support for the Palestinian people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, First Secretary. I would like to welcome the leadership of SASCO that just walked in, and we would ask them to give a brief message of support in relation to Israeli Apartheid Week, specifically before the minister speaks, noting that SASCO has adopted a zero tolerance on its members on it going on Israeli trips and supporting Israel. I would now like to welcome the SASCO leadership. Thank you. The chairperson, Comrade
Henola ipropa Haselo tozuma wenze wenze nuzuma kaupendule Penula ipropa kanda Henula propaganda. Amanda! 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 Viva, viva, Sasco, viva! Viva, Sasco, Sasco, viva! Mdlwembe, long live Sasco, long live! Kuba, PTS, Kuba! Phambili nge-PTS phambili Mdlwembe ongayifuniyo i-progress awuhlale phansi Mdlwembe we-apartheid Israel awuhlale phansi awuhlale phansi Mdlwembe we-apartheid Israel awuhlale phansi. Thank you very much, comrades. We must firstly apologize for being late. And these are part amongst many things we must improve on as SASCO. Keeping time, being disciplined, because no revolution can be waged without discipline. In fact, we're glad that we got here and the program had been had carried on without us. Because SASCO members must learn that if you do not come on time, the program is not going to wait for you. And in my salutations, before we get to the actual message, it is integral and fundamental that a youth movement, a student movement, have vibrancy. You can't be a youth movement and you can't be students, and there's no vibrancy and youthfulness there. Then there is something wrong. If we are going to want to wear suits and act prim and proper and professional, then there's a problem. And you don't want to stand and you can't say Amandla when you come here. There's a problem. So in giving a message of support is to urge youth activists, student activists, that we must maintain our vibrancy, we must uphold a youthfulness which is integral in ensuring that we wage struggles that are very necessary in the context of our liberation. But beyond that, I think we recently have made some strides as SASCO, and we've been consistent in supporting the BDS movement and supporting all movements that are fighting against Israel-occupied Palestine. Recently in UJ, you will recall, there was an issue, in fact, it was the WITS SRC that went to Israel. SASCO had suspended all those members that went to that trip in affirming its posture and its support for the people of Palestine. And in our recent NGC, National General Council, our highest policy decision-making body between national congresses, we affirmed our support for the Palestine movement. And I think we are not at this platform going to turn our backs. We apologize for not being disciplined enough to make it on time and to respect this gathering. But I think discipline is necessary and paramount. Youthfulness is necessary and paramount. And SASCO, beyond anything, affirms its support, its resilience, its consistency in terms of waging the struggle for liberation in Israel-occupied Palestine. So I think, comrades, without further ado, this is not our show. We're just giving a message of support. I hope now the vibrancy that was partially lacking in my salutations is going to come back. Amandla! Amandla! Awethu! Amandla! Awethu! Just before I sit down, I think I always find it necessary, because some comrades they say Amandla, and they don't understand what we actually mean by it. You know, beyond anything, there is unity in strength, comrades. There is unity in strength, there is unity in cohesion, there is unity in having a consolidated vision moving forward. And the reason this fist is closed is to symbolize that unity of purpose that we all have. And I think when we say Amandla, it's not to exclude or whatever. It's to affirm that our unity is in our strength is in our numbers. So I think, comrades, and there's this misconception that it's just an ANC salutation. It's a salutation that symbolizes strength in numbers. So everyone, when we shout Amandla, should be affirming that our strength is in our numbers, our strength in our support is in our strength is in being able to support and give numbers to movements that seek for the liberation of Israel-occupied Palestine. So, comrades, when we say Amandla and we have a vibrant room, can we as well, all of you, none of you are professionals here and are in parliament and are going to be boring. When we say Amandla, youthful people must be able to act youthful and shout that they believe that truly our strength is in our numbers, comrades. Amandla! Awethu! Thank you very much.
Amandla! Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. The next speaker needs no real introduction. She's well known within the structures of the ANC, within the structures of the broader mass democratic movement, and within the South African fabric. She's been a former Gauteng Premier. She's been a member of the Central Committee of the SACP. She's an ANC NEC member. She is the head of organizing of the ANC. We call her Mama Action for a reason, because she has substance. And as a woman leader on this day of International Women's Day, we'd like to welcome you to give us some of your input in regards to Israeli Apartheid Week. Thank you.
Amandla, awethu. Free Palestine, free. Liberate the youth of Palestine, liberate. Liberate the women of Palestine, liberate. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Long live the fighting spirit of President Tambo, long live. Long live the fighting spirit of President Tambo, long live. Amandla, awethu. Viva ANC, viva. Viva ANC, viva. Viva the ANC Youth League, viva. Viva the ANC Women's League, viva. Viva the SACP, viva. Viva YCL, viva. Viva COSATU, viva! Viva SASCO, viva! Viva SANCO, viva! Viva SANCO, viva! Phambili nge-international solidarity, phambili. Phambili nge-international solidarity, phambili. Thank you, ngiyabonga. Comrades, let me first acknowledge the leadership of the students here. Lulama, I'm told Comrade Lulama is the chairperson of SASCO and the provincial chair of SASCO who had just spoken. Comrade Bradley, Comrade Bram from BDS, the regional leadership of the ANC here in Boland, members of the ANC, fellow South Africans, a very good afternoon. We here, amongst other things, to come and reassert our commitment on behalf of millions of South Africans, based on our own historical past, as well as our own continued attempt to reconstruct our country, to reaffirm our commitment once more that we do believe in an independent, free, sovereign Palestine, a Palestine based on the will of the people of Palestine, and not a Palestine that will be a negotiated settlement that compromises the sovereignty of the people of Palestine. The ANC has declared 2017 as our year of President Oliver Tambo, deepening unity. The name of President Tambo has become synonymous to international solidarity. He's a central figure of the South African struggle, as is Comrade Yasser Arafat is to the Palestinian struggle. It was Comrade Luli Kalinikas in the biographic depiction of President Tambo titled, and I quote, "Beyond the Ingeni Mountains," close quote, that she states that, and I quote, "It was Oliver Tambo who held the ever more inclusive liberation movement together during its 30 years of exile, helping it to interpret its vision and values for the world, and nurturing its collective culture amongst its far-flung membership," close quote. It was Comrade President Tambo during his tenure as the president of the ANC who increasingly ensured that at every international forum, he advocated the liberation struggle of other nations, particularly the people and the plight of the people of Palestine. He, more than any other leader, also highlighted the plight and struggles of nations that were still under the yoke of colonial domination and oppression. The struggle of the Palestinian people was not an exception to that notion of international solidarity. Here we are reminded by what Comrade Tambo said in 1979, and I quote, "The PLO in Palestine and the ANC in South Africa represent a future that is not anti-colonial merely, but anti-imperialist as well. These liberation movements are the midwives of the future which will be characterized by the transfer of power to the people," close quote. Fast forward years later, South Africa has seen the dawn of democracy. Yet we continue to see young people of Palestine defending themselves with stones, not even with rocks. Women of Palestine having to run around and hide, carrying their babies, barefooted and pregnant. And as a nation, what we continue to see depicting the plight of the people of Palestine must actually remind us that once upon a time, the situation in Palestine was similar to that of us, the people of South Africa. But most importantly, it was out of a united effort of the people of South Africa that we found a settlement that has ushered in political independence. And therefore, part of what is of importance is to share also that a political experience, that revolutionary experience with the people of Palestine, that unity is strength. A shared vision makes it possible that those who are championing the cause for solidarity with yourselves must be led by yourselves in a united and a much more focused approach. Because in a divided approach, the struggle will continue and the gains that have been made through international solidarity will be weakened. Both the 52nd Polokwane and 53rd Mangaung National Conference of the ANC proffered clear resolutions on the Palestinian question. The Polokwane Conference resolution stated in part that the 60th anniversary of the Palestinian catastrophe known as the Nakba, which resulted in the dispossession of Palestinian lands and their birthright through a systematic policy of colonial expansion, ethnic cleansing, and military occupation of the most brutal kind, which as South African we readily recognize from our own experience of apartheid. That given our own experience in our liberation struggle, we as South Africans know the force of an international solidarity campaign bringing to bear on an oppressive regime to force it into real negotiations and a just solution. Those were the resolutions of the Polokwane 52nd Conference. In our 53rd Conference in Mangaung, the ANC reaffirmed the resolution of the 52nd National Conference. And it further stated that we are unequivocal in our support for the Palestinian people and their struggle for self-determination and unapologetic in our view that the Palestinians are the victims and the oppressed in the conflict with Israel. That we as the ANC, we're calling on South Africans to support the programs and campaigns of the Palestinian civil society that seek to put pressure on Israeli to engage with the Palestinian people to reach a just solution. Now recently in our NGC, we recommended the following: that the ANC should pursue peace and democracy in the Middle East, including the liberation of the people of Palestine. In this regard, we must continuously review South Africa's relations with the State of Israel and encourage disengagement on programs and activities that may impact on our solidarity with the people of Palestine. That is my response to your earlier comments, that we must continue to do that. There are two phases to the Israeli water story. The first is widely and extensively marketed. This is that technologically and in practice, Israel is a leading water innovations country with an excellent track record in water research, inventions, practices, and products that are exported worldwide. At the same level, Israel has been using water and the control of water access as a tool to control the Palestinian state. This is validated by various pieces of research, many of these reports developed and overseen by the United Nations. In fact, the former Deputy Secretary General of the UN talked at the World Water Week in 2016 in Stockholm of Israel using water and water access as a weapon of war. Israel has become leading producer of water solutions. Israel has accomplished much in this arena, becoming one of the world's leading nations, both in water practice and in developing water solutions, precisely because of the suppression of access to information that can come from the occupied territories and the people of Palestine. In 2013, it was also acknowledged that for Israel, a 2.2 billion export industry has been growing, that the country has also claimed to have advanced in domain of water science technology. However, at the same time, Israel is the world's practitioner in water apartheid. And I'm sure those of us who are victims of apartheid, South Africans, we know how water can actually be used to promote separate development, to undermine the reproductive rights of women, to deprive the girl child the right to learn and the right to grow as an ordinary human being. We all know that separate development and the use of water as a means of exploitation and oppression, many of our own can attest how they have become victims of rape, murder, and many other atrocities because they had to travel distances to go and fetch water. We also know how waterborne diseases can actually escalate because of the non-availability of clean water. But also, we also know that many of our own solutions in South Africa, indigenous solutions, end up being taken by those who have the ability to use technology at our own expense as the bona fides of alternative water solutions in this country. And this is exactly what is happening between Palestine, the people of Palestine, and the people of Israel. And therefore, what we have to also appreciate is that everybody has given a warning that the next wars of the world will be fought on the basis of access to water and water security. And amongst the battles and the issues, the interests in the struggle for the emancipation of the people of Palestine against Israel has to do not only with access to water, but water security and the control of the water infrastructure and water source, amongst others in the Middle East. And therefore, we need as a country, as we deal with our own commitment to emancipate the people of Palestine, appreciate, yes, that water knows no boundary, but exploitation can actually create artificial boundaries for access to clean water. And those are some of the contradictions around the people of Palestine and they applied for their own total emancipation. One of the other critical things that we need to look at is how Israel has, despite the redeclaration of the Palestinian state, retained complete control of all water access and water use in Palestine through the mechanism that is called the Joint Management Commission, that although constituted with representation from both Israel and Palestine, Israel retains a de facto veto power. The decisions to date show 100% of Israeli projects approved and a mere 56% of projects in Palestine. So much so that Palestine has withdrawn since 2010. This has resulted in skewed distribution. For example, Palestinians in the West Bank have access to 73 liters per person per day, whilst the World Health Organization standard is 100 liters per day. And the Israeli access is a whopping 240 to 300 liters per day. In addition, the occupied territories in the occupied territories, there are hundreds of Palestinian communities that are not connected to water supplies. Importantly, there is also the matter of frequent and strategic water shutdowns by Mekorot, the Israeli national water company, to the Palestinians. Last year's Ramadan cut-off to the West Bank also made international news. The net result is daily hardship combined with very high water insecurity, which hampers any reasonable development in Palestine. This can unmistakably only happen to draw our memory to the brutality of apartheid South Africa and the Bantu homelands. Just to share with yourselves, we all know that some parts of our country were regions that were sending regions to urban areas, areas such as the Eastern Cape. They are sending areas to areas such as Cape Town, Gauteng, and so on and so forth. If you look at what is happening to the plight of the people of Palestine in terms of water infrastructure, as we speak here today, in the area where the majority of the victims of Marikana come from, to date, people still share water with animals. More than 456 villages still do not have access to water. From the times of the Bantu, of the homeland systems, and the apartheid government, there has been a carrot that has been forever dangled for that particular area of our country with a project called, I hope you know, Umzimvubu. If you go and check as to when did this particular project came into being, when was it conceptualized? It was conceptualized before I was even born, in 1962. So you can see, if I was not born in 62, it means I'm young, eh? It was conceptualized in 1962, and every Prime Minister of South Africa dangled this carrot to all Bantu stand leaders of the Eastern Cape that we are Zumzimvubu. Even post-1994, starting with Madiba, President Thabo Mbeki, President Kgalema, and President Zuma, Mzimvubu is still an issue under discussion. And yet, you do have the great Umzimvubu River with water that is available on that corner. But because of our own commitment towards radical economic transformation, this government under President Jacob Zuma has now taken that project as one of our mega projects in the world, after the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, to make sure that we develop that corner of our country and we stop the issues of the migration from the rural areas to the urban areas, and we suppress the exploitation of young people, as we have seen with thousands of them being in the mining towns, like what happened with Marikana. And our commitment is that this is one of the projects that will become an international project, where through President Jacob Zuma, together with the head of state of the People's Republic of China, South Africa is working towards making sure that iyenzeka imzimvubu, because it is about the emancipation of the forgotten lot. And it is exactly in the same vein that we need to appreciate the plight of young people in Palestine, the movement of people in Palestine who also are beginning to have a sense of helplessness and vulnerability, precisely because water is life. You can take away energy supply, you will find a substitute to create water, to create fire, to create light. But with water, there is no substitute. And therefore, the conflicts that are there are not just mere conflicts about political power. It is also about a fundamental resource, control and ownership of water. Because what it does, in turn, it also brings the dignity of the most vulnerable back. Those of us who have grown up in the apartheid townships and in the Bantustans in our villages, we know what it takes for a woman to go and relieve herself. It takes your dignity away. Those who live here in Cape Town using pota pota, you know what happens living with a bucket that you have to carry. It takes away the dignity of your family and yourself. And therefore, the struggle for the emancipation of the people of Palestine is bigger than the political power. It has to do with a very critical resource, a resource that brings life and restores the dignity of every human being. The second thrust is the parallel with South Africa and the apartheid state. Apartheid South Africa was also a leading player in the world with respect to water. Remember? Like in Israel, desert areas in South Africa were converted to some of the most productive agricultural land in the world through irrigation techniques that were cutting edge for its time. In the 70s, at the height of apartheid, South Africa was lauded as the leading interbasin plumbers of the world with its extensive dam building and transfer of schemes. And the contradictions were, the dams were built next to our own villages, but the villagers will have to walk past the dam and go to the river and leave the dam full with water. And when the water is full in the dam, the privileged white minority will be invited to come and play water sport, whilst a newborn baby has to wait for the mother for more than 2 hours to just get water to prepare a bottle or to wash a newly born baby. It is those kind of contradictions that, whilst the world may celebrate the technological capacity, but the right of an ordinary human being gets exploited with that huge capacity of building infrastructure and having the knowledge, but that knowledge fails to emancipate the most vulnerable. And this is exactly the parallel that we're actually sharing here today. The present ANC-led government is doing its utmost best to address the incredible service backlogs that were socially engineered, and I referred to the story of Umzimvubu. Because one of the things that we also did was to ensure that water is enshrined as a basic human right in our constitution, precisely because of its strategic significance. That it is not just a service. It is about life, it is about peace, it is about security, it is about dignity. And this is amongst the other things that we are raising for an independent and a sovereign Palestine. There must be those fundamentals that are guaranteed in ensuring that the people of Palestine cannot be onlookers of this precious resource that can make them to prosper. The water sector is critical for government's transformation and development objectives. As I've earlier said, water is life and has a catalytic cross-cutting impact on socio-economic development as well as peace and stability. And the question that begs an answer is, why is it that the Israeli government does not use water as an agent for change and unity, but more as a weapon of war? The struggle of the women in Palestine is part and parcel of the struggle for national liberation against the occupying force of the Israeli regime. The struggle itself has produced some of the great women who were born of struggle to break away from the shackles of the occupying force of the Israeli. We dip our revolutionary banner to women like Leila Khaled and Hanan Ashrawi, who became part and parcel of the struggle despite all patriarchal impediments. Because whilst we're fighting the cause for the emancipation of the people of Israel, just like in the NC, there's a lot of patriarchy, male chauvinism, and even suppression of women to contribute towards finding everlasting solutions. And hence, as we deal with the plight of the people of Palestine, but also reflecting on the life of President Oliver Tambo, we must appreciate that there can never be a peaceful and a prosperous Palestine, nor a peaceful and a prosperous South Africa without women assuming responsibility of leading, of managing, and deciding the future of the country. And that, in honor of President Tambo, is something that we must carry on and remind everybody that whilst men will actually wage struggles and leave their women and children behind and use their male macho rather than dealing with the things that affect the life of a newly born child, if you bring a woman into the table and talk to the other woman of Israel to say, once you have given birth, the immediate thing you need for your newly born baby is clean water to bath the baby. I also deserve it. Wouldn't that expedite the engagements? In the same vein as we have seen in South Africa, how our own CODESA negotiations had gone until women, through the South African Women's Coalition, came together and imposed themselves at the negotiation table and said, you can talk about the army, you can talk about the date for elections, but if you are not going to give guarantees on the second generational rights and make them to become part of the Constitution, this freedom will not be our freedom. And hence today, again, everybody can acknowledge everyone who was in the negotiations. But we forget that that Bill of Rights that is enshrined in our Constitution is there because women imposed themselves in the negotiation and demanded that the Bill of Rights must be enshrined in the Constitution, but the preamble also must talk about the human rights. Today, leadership of women is being taken as something that cannot actually be trusted. And yet women in South Africa delivered the Bill of Rights as enshrined in the Constitution. Men had forgotten about that. Men were discussing the provincial governments. Men were discussing all these many other things. Women brought the ordinary things. The right to housing, the right to water, the right to quality education. The right to water, the right to education, the right to quality to health, and all those things. And I think part of what we have to do in the plight of the people of Palestine is to get young people, because it is about their future, even in South Africa, is to get those who are victims of triple exploitation to also occupy the center stage and accelerate the pace for emancipation. That is what we have to do, but ngesizulu kuthiwa indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili. What we can't wish away is that historical experience of those who came before us. And we must celebrate and honor them and appreciate that we're standing on the shoulders of those gentle giants who have shaped the path, but who must also extend the baton to those who are present today, guide them, but embrace the fact that today is totally different from yesterday. And the future cannot be defined only by the past, but it must also be influenced by the current experiences. And therefore, the plight for the people of Palestine and the women of Palestine also requires that we must carry further, Comrade Bram, what the ANC did in 2016 when we hosted Comrade Leila Khalid, when she came to South Africa, and her stature as a revolutionary has hardly diminished with the passage of time, and we need to therefore say, can't Comrade Leila be the face of the most vulnerable? Make her to be the face of the most vulnerable. The ANC was able to pick Nomzamo Matikizela Mandela and make her to become the face of resistance. That is what one is raising with BDS, with the people of Palestine. Raise the plight of women. It can become a rallying call. It can become a unifying call. Because once you put the plight of a woman, remember that woman has got many other young people that she had to look after. Winnie Mandela was taken in her pajamas from her house with her 2 children left behind. That conscientized some of us because we did not wish to become like Winnie Madikizela Mandela's children. We must liberate this country. And therefore, that plight of Winnie Mandela being separated from her husband also made the world, including the Palestinian people, to rally behind our call. Because she became the symbol of resistance, the symbol of pain, the symbol of abuse, the symbol of insults. And every time when the enemy tried to separate her from the movement, she will actually come out and say, what I'm going through is not because I'm Nomzamo Matikizela Mandela. It is a reflection of what many, many other South Africans are going through, but it is in pursuance of the objectives of the ANC, which then says women can be a best symbol of organization, can be the best symbol of showing the contradictions in a society, and they can become a rallying factor of opposing approaches towards a common goal. That's why when you said Nomzamo Madikizela Mandela is a member of Umkhonto weSizwe, people will say yes, she's a freedom fighter. She is a woman of prayer, yes she is. She is a mother, yes she is. She's Mrs. Mandela, yes. She's a freedom fighter in her own right, not Mr. Mandela's wife, yes. But with a man, it might be your jacket and you alone. But with a woman, it may also be a representation of a community, but a sector that is consistently there and very daring. And hence, I want to repeat that there are those women like Leila and those freedom fighters like Hanan who must also be carried and be made as our symbol and a point of reference in our cause for the emancipation of the people of Palestine. So that then, when we talk to people, we don't talk about a struggle that does not have the face of the ordinary, not of leaders, of the ordinary, who has opted to assume this particular responsibility, not out of choice, but out of design. We also do believe that the occupation has undermined the Palestinian right to self-determination, and it also impedes the development of a Palestinian constitution. But the development of a Palestinian constitution, amongst others, requires of Palestinians to be much more united in diversity. Whilst we may have different views, but our intention is to have that. Just like us, we are where we are because of a negotiated settlement. So, we do need to make sure that, as we have said, Israeli is apartheid Israeli. Therefore, there are so many lessons we can draw from the Palestinian people. In the same vein, there are many lessons that the Palestinian people can learn from us. The liberal paradigm wants to de-link the issues of patriarchy from the national liberation cause. And this is one of the things that we must never actually move away from. But also the mobilization of different sectors, communities, and interest groups. Young people also require much more organized and focused approach. It is not only through theoretical engagement, but it is also about solidarity programs. I was just saying to Comrade Bram, in my time when I was almost your age, it was not a privilege. I was assigned by the ANC before its unbanning as part of the anti-apartheid movement in the United Kingdom to go and spend 7 days talking about the plight of South African children in detention. And part of that particular program was supported by the trade union movement, the transport union in the UK, was supported also by the Sandinista movement through President Daniel Ortega. And we went to the UK also accompanied by Moses Mayegiso, who comes from what was then the biggest trade union in South Africa, NUMSA. We went for 7 weeks between London and many other cities where you have bigger universities, as well as Scotland. Not just talking to activists, we were even sharing with kids in a daycare center, telling them what is South Africa and why am I here. And Daniel Ortega would come in and say, what is it that they did to be where they were as the Sandinista movement to liberate themselves? Comrade Moses Mayegiso will talk as being a father who's a trade unionist, and we all know the strength of the transport union in the UK. By the time we left, the people who are running a daycare center will have 2-3 things for every kid to take home. Remember, kids, when they get home, first thing is, how was it, baby, at crash? And the child will say, no, they told us about somebody called Mandela who's been in jail. What has he done? Because he wants peace. So, these little kids became the messengers of the anti-apartheid movement. We'll go to universities. Trade unions will organize marches and all those things. But also there was twinning. As we're sitting here as BDS, as SASCO, as the ANC Youth League, as the ANC, part of what we must be doing is to be much more action-orientated. Find ways of identifying with a face that is in Palestine. Young people that are in Palestine, as women, let's look at that. Because again, in our own olden experience, those who are in exile have survived because of international solidarity. If homes get bombed anytime in Palestine, and there is a young girl who's having her menstruations, where does she get a sanitary pad? Shouldn't we look at that as a campaign to say, you know what, let's stockpile our sanitary pads in solidarity with the girl child in Palestine? Simple. If people can go hungry, if mothers and children can go into hiding in a ditch in Palestine, maybe you don't know. We have lived that life during the black on black violence. What was called the black. You leave your home, and you have nothing to eat. You have nothing to drink. But through the Council of Churches, they will come to that Troubletown Township because people of the world had mobilized the resources to support us. Shouldn't we be looking at those things? What happens to a woman whose house gets bombed and she's got a newly born baby in Palestine? What is it that the Women's League can do on that? There is nothing that makes solidarity to be relevant other than action. Other than action. And we can also be remembered by the people of Palestine when they get to know that we have this because the people of South Africa have sent us a box of candles because electricity gets switched off for more than 3 months. Just a packet of candles. Nothing complicated. I don't know how much we spend to buy your cider and all these things and stuff and our nails and our hairstyles. But if we say we will collect boxes of candles, we'll collect fish, canned fish, we'll collect sanitary pads for the women of Palestine. And we remember the girl child. And let's put a face. And my own submission is, we know the two. Shouldn't we have a campaign around women of Palestine and use the name of Leila and Hanan? We remember you. You are us, we are you. Our struggle gained momentum because people of the world identified with our day-to-day living conditions. Nothing complicated. And therefore, it can't be difficult for people of South Africa to have programs that are going to make sure that we ease the pain, but we accelerate the emancipation of Palestine through our actions. One of the things that I'm also raising, and I hope one day you'll bring in the Minister of Agriculture, is around food security in South Africa. Are we not able to produce our own grapes when we've got wine farms here? And yet we have grapes in Woolies and everywhere from somewhere. What kind of negotiations do we enter into in the World Trade Organization as a country? The current discussion we're talking about around access to land in South Africa and ownership of land. Shouldn't we be looking at it and say, what is it that can increase our capacity, but also how can we minimize dumping of products into South Africa and increase our capacity to produce for ourselves? But it can only happen if we invest in your education, because there must be scientific evidence and knowledge on what is it we can do given the realities of climate change and water security in South Africa. So, investing in your education is very important because your own future and your own career must be informed by the demands of a future South Africa. There's no point. I'm not saying you can't study biblical studies, but listen here, we need food in South Africa. So, if we have to deal with these issues that continue to become a problem on our relationship between South Africa and Israel, who's going to come with alternative solutions on water in this country? You have to take your own education serious. If we have to deal with food security, you can go to Woolies and pull those things down. Fact of the matter, there's a demand in South Africa. So the alternative is to make sure that you circumvent the demand, the supply that comes out of the apartheid Israel by being able to produce yourselves. And therefore, we need, as South Africans, particularly you young people, to look at campaigns and programs that minimizes our dependency and things that we are told are complicated to understand. Shouldn't we be reviewing those treaties? I mean, there's been this story now of the Obama chicken and the South African runaway chicken. You must help us on that solution. Because if we're not going to have a learned and an informed citizenry, you like it or not, you would have called it an Obama chicken, you'll call it a Trump chicken, Oksalayo, it will be here. Why? Because we don't take agriculture and food security, food production as very key. But they can only be very important if you understand the significance of science. The significance of science in food security. It's very important. The understanding of the international trade relations becomes also quite important. As I conclude, we must also, as part of the international community, continue to refuse that anything that has to do with the emancipation of the people of Palestine and even the people of Sahrawi and any other oppressed nation can be done through delinking the feminist struggles and national struggles. We have that better experience that there can never be a free South Africa until women are free. We know. But we also know that it does not come over a silver platter. It requires struggle. It requires you losing popularity and fame. It requires being more informed and articulate. It requires consistency. But it also requires everyone, not only women, to become the champion. And hence the celebration of President Oliver Tambo as one of those presidents of the ANC who was very consistent on the emancipation of women. We need to also agree that one of the things that we all have to appreciate is that we need to create vibrancy, and we must appreciate the efforts of the BDS. However, it must be part of the agenda of the mass democratic movement that every time when a leader of the mass democratic movement speaks, he or she can't speak and not speak about the liberation of Palestine. It must be, whether you are in the UN, whether you are in AU, whether you are in your branch in Khayelitsha, you must say something called Palestine. Whatever you have said, whether uteni, but abantu babuza ukuthi, why all these people mabethetha nje yintoni le Palestine idume ngani? Because if that disappears, it becomes something that every day you must say, no, there is Palestine because once upon a time there was this thing, And no one takes it as our clarion call. In every speech, in every presentation, we must be able to draw parallels between ourselves and the people of Palestine. We can only do that if we all become organizationally disciplined, but also if we have political clarity and depth. Because sometimes we may say things that actually fly against your good intention. Thank you, Bradley, for inviting the ANC here. I didn't come on my own. I left cabinet. And my excitement was to come and talk to young people. And as I've said, truly, comrades, I've seen young people from the age of 4 in the world taking the plight of the people of South Africa serious. Our liberation came through the contributions of the people of the world. So this must not be an event, my comrade. It can't be. And your militancy and radicalism must be directed to the right cause. And maybe, Palestine can be liberated just through your own determination now. Because many of us have been there. But you are there, you've got the energy and the space that is more sophisticated than me and my own time when I was a young person. So use that space. Use that space. Use social media to mobilize around the plight of your own peers in Palestine. Don't just wear the scarf. Act and make a difference. For me, that is very paramount. Act and make a difference. The world liberate. Oh, at least it goes with my color coordination. Thank you. The world liberated you, South Africans. The world liberated you. It is your turn to liberate the people of Palestine. Amandla.